What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bring incredible guests from all over the world. So sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is a certified alcohol-free coach, success coach, mindset coach, and NLP practitioner. Please welcome Marcy Rossi. Marcy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, there's been more and more conversations around being alcohol free. And I want to get into like what you do as far as being a coach for people, but I want to first kind of understand the reason why you started doing this kind of coaching, because there's always a story.
There is. And if you had asked me 2 years ago, I would have thought this was absolutely ridiculous. Like, I was convinced that I loved alcohol. It was in everything that I did, any activities that we do. We had drinking, like alcohol. The only people that didn't drink were people that had problems or that were just, somehow different. Like, of course you drink when you go to baby showers and parties and everything is alcohol related. So I imagined a life without alcohol was a deprivation. So that didn't appeal to me. But at the same time, I recognized that I was starting to have a problem. So health is a real big value of mine, and I love to read. And so at one point I heard about Dry January about 4 or 5 years back. And I thought, let me just try this because I'm going to be glowing skin and lose 30 pounds. And so I tried Dry January, and I ended up drinking 3 times in that month. But, one time it was a really hard day at work, and another time it was someone's birthday. So those didn't count. And I did it a couple more times year after year. And it only once was I able to go all 31 days without drinking. And I was completely miserable. I was thinking about alcohol every single day for those 31 days, planning, when I'm going to have my drink on February 1st. And so this to me said, I have a problem. So at this stage, I know I have a problem, but I'm not ready to deal with it, right? I have just said, it is everything that I do. If we go to celebrate, if I'm sad, if I'm bored, if I'm fill in the blank here, alcohol is what I turn to. So knowing I had a problem and being ready to deal with it, there was a bit of a time gap in there. When I finally did, I knew I was not going to go to rehab. I wouldn't say my problem was that bad. I could hold down a job. I wasn't getting arrested. Yeah. My relationships were fine. So I didn't need to be locked up for 30 days. And I didn't have $50,000 anyway. I also didn't want to go to AA, right? It didn't appeal to me. It appeals to a lot of people, but I'm not a religious person. I don't like the word alcoholic. I have very strong feelings about that, and we can dive into it. But I was never going to call myself an alcoholic. I was just struggling at this point in my life. So I ended up finding a coaching program, something I didn't even realize existed in this sphere. I thought you only had those other 2 options, and it was transformational for me. So I, by 3 months in, was like, I don't ever want to do this again, and I want to help people to never want to do this again, right? So it was just mind-blowing to me that this was a possibility that life could actually be better without alcohol, not actually sadder. And so I wanted to bring that same kind of transformation to other people. So I went and started getting certified and started racking up the certifications, and that's what I do now.
Yeah, and I remember on our intro call that we were talking a little bit about how drinking is so romanticized.
Yeah.
And so I just did Dry January, and I think we talked in January, and right. I come from a family of drinkers. My father was an alcoholic. My mom's family, every family party was just drinks, fun. Me and my cousins, when we turned 21, doing shots of tequila, drinking the whole bottle. And so I've always drank alcohol. I mean, I've been on drugs too, but that's from another lifetime. But it's so romanticized. And I love on your website and your about page and how you talk about being bored or having a bad day at work. Yep. Or someone's celebration, like you mentioned. There's always a reason to say, "Oh, I'm going to have a couple drinks."
Yep. Yeah, and alcohol industry spends a lot of money to make sure you know all those reasons, right? It's hard to separate. Try to go watch the Super Bowl without beer. 325 gallons of beer are consumed on that one weekend or day. It's those 2 things go hand in hand. A romantic dinner requires wine. You're gonna go to an Italian restaurant and not order wine? There's so many things where they partner, even places they shouldn't be. Drinking at baby showers. You got the person of honor can't drink, and everybody around her is drinking, right? It's nuts. But yeah, they spend a lot of money making sure that you realize that alcohol is the solution to whatever the problem is that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the Dry January for me was actually pretty fine. I was like, okay, this is great. I had maybe thought about it a couple of times on a bad day, oh, it would be nice just to kind of unwind and relax, because that's something that we are used to. I'm gonna have a glass of wine to relax. But other than that, I was good. Why is it important for people to acknowledge what kind of relationship they have with alcohol?
So I didn't really think I had a problem until I had a problem. And I think this is where the word alcoholic can cause a lot of issues. So to me, I was not an alcoholic. If you ask me to define alcoholic, that's the person on the side of the road, drinking out of a paper bag, couldn't hold down a job, lost their homes. Like it was a very um rock bottom position that I pictured when you said alcoholic. But that wasn't me. Like my job was fine, work was fine. Like yes, I drank just about every night, and sometimes I hid it from people because I was a little embarrassed about how much I was drinking. But everything else was handled, so I was not that person. The other issue with alcoholic is, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. They talk
Right.
about at A, they talk
That
about being in
label.
recovery. Yeah. And
The
you can't
label.
remove it. Even if
Yeah.
you go 20 years without drinking, you're an alcoholic. Your last drink was 20 years ago. But I think the behavior has changed there. And to compare that to the person who's currently struggling and can't say no, I don't think that's an even comparison. So when you have these words that are so charged, you
Yeah.
don't want to look at it. So I wasn't going to say, I didn't ask myself, you know, am I drinking a little bit more than I want to be? It was, am I reaching that level of alcoholic? And if I could say, no, I'm not an alcoholic, then it's not a problem. It's an either or situation. Instead, I could be asking myself, is this helping me? Like, do I like spending Sunday mornings on the couch hungover? Do I
No.
like that my skin is so dry? Do I like, I started turning red eventually, with alcohol when I would drink it. It would just be embarrassing that I would start to flush because then it looked like I
Yeah.
couldn't handle it, right? I didn't ask those questions because as long as I wasn't on this side of the spectrum, everything else for me is fine. And I think that's where the word alcoholic can be really dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. I actually spoke to someone who started a almost like a telehealth service for people with alcohol use abuse issues.
Yeah.
And it's where people that don't want to stop drinking all the way, but maybe they need help on monitoring their intake, right?
Yeah.
And I thought it was very interesting that the words he used, alcohol use abuse, because yet that word alcoholic is very damaging. That's a
Yes.
label that I don't think anyone wants to have on them for the rest of their life.
Yeah, if you're an alcoholic, what you have is the disease of alcoholism, right? Is where they're going
Yeah.
from. But that's not a disease. There is no
Right.
definition of alcoholism, right? The medical community says alcohol use disorder or alcohol use abuse. And that's where it's a spectrum. It's not a yes or no, are you an alcoholic? It's how far are your behaviors kind of going out of control? And I think if you looked at it, it would be a little scary because on that mild end, you just have to say yes to two questions. And one of those questions is, have you ever, in the last year, ended up drinking more than you intended? And I'm sure a lot of us could say yes to that
Yeah,
one.
for sure.
And are you drinking now more than you used to get the same effect? And that's exactly how
Mhm.
tolerance works, right? So just
Yeah.
those two questions, you're already in the alcohol use disorder spectrum. You're at the mild end. So any more than that, you're kind of moving up. So I think having something like this where there's a spectrum gets us to start questioning those behaviors early on, where we're not necessarily drinking all day, but maybe we are drinking more than we set out. So why do we keep drinking if we say we're only going to have two tonight? Why do we grab that third? And then start kind of
Yeah.
digging into that behavior.
Yeah, no, I love that. Now, how does all your other things, success coach, mindset coach, and NLP practitioner, come into play when you're working with your clients?
So alcohol is the symptom to me, right? People that come to me that recognize that alcohol is a problem is because they're using it to generally self-medicate. They're using it to feel better. And the root of that generally, for most people that I coach are women, and the common refrain is that, like, I'm not enough. I'm not capable enough. I'm not enough in some form. And so when we remove that, the world opens up. When I don't have to use alcohol to feel more sociable, to be able to handle my children, to be able to feel confident, to feel XYZ.
Right.
When I actually am all of those things, the world opens up and you can start doing other things. And so that's when we move into more of the success coaching and NLP practitioner, where you're starting to see, instead of comparing yourself, you're like, wow, she can do it. So heck yeah, I can do it too, right? And that's where it kind of comes. So really, alcohol is just a tiny part of it. And then the whole world opens up and you can there's really no stopping you once you remove something that you've had limiting you. There's that big
Yeah.
limiting beliefs tied in alcohol where you drink it because life isn't fun without it, because
Right.
things are boring without it. You're telling yourself you're boring without it. You're not fun without it. And that's just not true.
No, it's not true. Yeah, there's a lot of other reasons there. So, at what point does someone come to work with you? Where do they want to completely stop drinking alcohol, or they just want to get a handle on where they are with their relationship with alcohol?
you want to know the secret? So they'll come to me. They'll come to me. Well, first of all, you can never, this is a question I've gotten to, is how do you get someone to admit that they need help? That's not going to happen. So you cannot force someone to recognize that they need help. And I'm not going to work with anybody that is not at the point where they're dedicated to change, because I can't do the change for you. You have to do the work. I can help you, but I can't do it. So when they come to me recognizing that there's time to get change, most times the thought is, I want to be able to control my drinking. I want to be able to moderate. I want to just have one. And that's fine. And I can get you there. But the issue is, that's actually harder than quitting, because when you're moderating, you have to have some rules. Okay, if I'm only going to have one, I have a rule where I'm only going to have one. And the more you learn about alcohol, which is that mindset coach coming in, the less you want it. Like if you learn, which I had no idea, alcohol is a carcinogen, a group 1 carcinogen. Okay, so is tobacco, asbestos, and radiation. Those are all at the same level.
Holy cow.
Do you think about alcohol being a carcinogen, or do you think about like liver disease, right? That's what happens is if you drink too much, you hurt your liver. But it is a group 1 carcinogen. So that was mind blowing to me. And it was labeled that 35 years ago.
Holy cow, they never talk about that.
They never talk. And then they'll put pink ribbons on their wine bottles selling it. And breast cancer is for sure tied to alcohol. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. So learning these things are like, oh, do I want that? Like, is that in line with my values? As someone who values health and is doing something that I know is increasing my risk for cancer, is that in alignment? And if I start to experience, socializing or having fun without alcohol, then do I even really need it? So you kind of remove any of the desire there with the mindset coaching. So yeah, you could moderate if you want to, but I just don't think you're going to want to when you really look at it.
Oh, hi. It's your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcasts. I'm here to share an exciting opportunity with you. I've recently partnered with SecureVPN.io. They specialize in protecting your online activity, such as transactions, your online searches, your privacy protection, and it protects you from any data leakage from hackers out there that have access to your information. So please click the link in bio and take advantage of this special opportunity with SecureVPN.io. Again, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. What are some of the benefits? I mean, you kind of already talked about some of them, but what are some of the benefits when someone's completely just stops drinking altogether? They finally get to a point where they're comfortable with themselves in social situations. They don't need to turn to it to unwind. And when they're bored, it's not something that fills up their pastime, whatever. Mm-hmm. What are the benefits of someone when they completely stop drinking alcohol?
I'm going to use myself for this example. I started a business and I had never thought that I could be an entrepreneur. I wasn't creative enough. I didn't have these brilliant ideas that people did. So I wanted to run a company. That was always going to be my goal, but it had to be something someone else started and I just kind of snuck in. And when I kind of removed alcohol, I realized I was so much stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. I was so much more capable. And I'm going to tell you, when you stop drinking, your time expands, right? So I can't tell you how many hours I sat on the couch, drinking and watching Grey's Anatomy. And now it's like, those shows just aren't as interesting without a glass of wine there. So I'm going to do something else. And so all of those hours that you've wasted where the activity was sitting at a bar and drinking, you now have that time to start crushing your goals. Yeah. So that's the big thing. I think a lot of people talk about the physical benefits, right? You're sleeping better. You could lose weight potentially, although sugar addiction tends to follow the alcohol drinking. That was a big one for me. And that's why I quit sugar too. But if you can quit one thing, you can quit other things. Sure. Your skin will improve. Talk about all of the physical benefits. But for me, it was the mental. It was recognizing I don't need this to feel good in my own skin. Like I am enough and I can do things. I can accomplish my goals and start knocking them out. So I think that's the real benefit there.
For sure. I would never want to sit at the bar and drink because I got way too many goals. Like that's not something that sounds like fun to me. Like I know people here in my social circle that's all they do is they go out and drink. I can't go just because that just does not sound fun to me. No. I'd rather be working on my podcast, be reading a book, going to the gym, something that is beneficial for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have, aside from yourself, but like a success story from one of your clients that came to you, what they're going through and what it looked like for them on the other side?
Yeah, it's going to be similar along the same lines where there was a woman that I was coaching who, again, just kind of, she was a mother and there's a lot of mommy wine culture, right? So we're
Yeah.
present all this is mommy's juice. And, that's also something coming from the alcohol industry. It's not your clever best friend coming up with this. This is a
Yeah.
targeted marketing campaign because the alcohol industry realized we're missing out on about half of the people out there when we only target men. So
Wow.
you're telling women that you need alcohol to cope, which is also kind of communicating to kids that mommy needs alcohol to deal with you. So that's a whole nother
Yeah.
issue there that's coming
Mm.
through. But that was some of the guilt that's there is you feel guilty because you're drinking, you're missing time with your kids, and you're also drinking because you feel like there's something missing. So kind of removing that enables you to feel like the good mom that you already are. Like you don't become a better mom, you're not a different person, but you're able to be present. And I don't know of any thing that you can do better for your kids than be present. They don't need fancy toys. They don't need private school. They need attention, right? And so by removing that one thing, you were able to be there, to listen, to really focus on them. And that was just something that just completely lit her up. That was, just again,
Yeah.
trying to get drinking under control, but realizing like, damn, I am a really good mom. I don't need this to be with my kids. And it's just actually it's actually hindering that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then just the example, you're creating a cycle there, right?
Yes.
So if you are a mother with your child, I mean, because it's true in my family,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
mother. So I see my mom drink when I'm little. As I get older, mommy and daddy, they're always having fun with their friends drinking. Then you think that, oh, it's okay to drink. So then
Yep.
you start developing your own relationship, your own potential future relationship with alcohol because you've had this example, and it just keeps going and going and going, right? And so when does it stop?
That's the thing. That's your example, right? It's, that's what adults do. I drink my juice now when I'm a kid, but when I'm an adult, then I get to drink. And that makes me feel mature. I just can't wait to
Yeah,
be an adult so I can be like them, right? And so, yeah, there is a lot of cycle. That's why you often see, again, I don't use the word alcoholic, but that's a word that's, just to use a word we all are familiar
yeah,
with, you see it tend to go through families, right? So parents are
yeah,
alcoholics and either the kid goes one of two ways, follows in there or goes the completely opposite direction and says, I'm never going to touch it. That's not as common because when they do this, there's also all of the media and all of society telling you, but normal people drink. So don't you want to just
yeah,
have one? Just have one. Just have one.
yeah.
It's fine, right? So
Well, let's kind of address that really quick, and then we'll start wrapping things up. What is a good response? So if someone's listening to this, and okay, well, if they're listening to this, they need help. We're gonna tell them go reach out to you. But if they're listening to this and they haven't been drinking, but they're constantly hearing that from people when they are get in social situations, like, oh, it's fine to have a drink.
mhm.
What is a great response to that?
Well, I'm a little snarky, so my response would be
Okay.
something along the lines of, "Well, why do you need to drink? Like, what is it doing for you?" Because that question is never, ever, ever about you. It's always about them. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
we're all selfish individuals. That's how you survive is by focusing on number one first, and I mean that's how the species propagates, right? So, if they're asking, well, just have one, it's because they want to be comfortable with their own drinking.
Yeah.
They're what if you can't have it and you don't need it, why do I need it? And that's not a question most people are comfortable with. So, there's all kinds of ways you can respond if you're not as comfortable of, kind of shining the spotlight on other people. You can, just say, you can lie always. You can say, I'm on antibiotics. I'm taking a little break. I have a busy morning. You can give whatever excuse. You can say whatever makes you feel comfortable. But the moral of the story, and something to remember, is it is not about you. The fact that they're questioning why you're not drinking means they're worried about their own drinking and they need you to join so that they don't have to look at themselves. And that's just not your responsibility.
Yeah.
You're not responsible for making other people feel good with their choices. You need to feel good with your choice. And so having that one, remembering, okay, if I make this less awkward by having one, I'm not being true to myself and what I really want, and keeping that in the forefront because that person's looking after themselves. You've got to look after you. No one is going to look after you like you are.
Yeah. And I can just say, I felt great in January, like clear-headed, definitely no hangovers, waking up feeling like crap, and just like, I mean, I'm type A. I typically get a lot of stuff done anyways, but it
Yeah.
was just nice not to have any hangovers whatsoever, and just being so clear and not having that need, right? That was a
Yeah.
great thing. That was a great thing for me to experience personally. Like I didn't need. I'd go out. I went out to the bar with my husband, with some girlfriends, his friend, and they were all drinking, and I was totally fine. I was dancing, like,
Yeah.
I had a blast. I still
Yeah.
had just as much fun.
And
Anyway,
then you
let's
remembered it the next day, right? So all those memories weren't drunk. You can actually remember having fun. It's not just I think I had fun because I don't remember it. Like you can
yeah,
remember your friend up there singing karaoke and just making a fool of ourselves. It's so
yeah,
much better. So much
it
better.
is. It is so much better. Where can people find you, connect with you, and learn more about working with you?
The best place is going to be my website. It's my name, marcyrossi.com. It has links to my socials on there as well. I'm mainly on Instagram. That's where I kind of post daily tips and advice there. But yeah, that's going to be the best place to look. And on my website, I will say that we didn't touch on this yet, but I have a guide on there it's 5 things to do before you quit drinking. And one of them that I do want to kind of emphasize, because I think it's a little important, is the first one there. So I'll give you the first one for free there. It's to talk to your doctor. And the reason I say this is there's a very small percentage of people that are physically addicted to alcohol, where, we might feel the withdrawal effects the morning after when we're a little nauseated or we have hangovers, but alcohol is one of the few drugs in the world where withdrawals can actually kill you. Wow. If you have any concern that you might be on this edge, and so few people are at this edge, it is like 10% of the heaviest drinkers that are there. If there's any doubt in your mind, I would be remiss not to mention it can be dangerous to just quit cold turkey and stop if you're on that kind of heavier aspect. So if you're worried at all, I would suggest talking to your doctor before you make any changes. But then other than that, it's really about the mindset work to make that lasting change.
I love that. That was a great piece of information. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, because I had no idea. You guys, I'm going to put those links in the show notes. So if you connected with Marcy's story and what she does, and you are looking to explore your relationship with drinking and making that better, go ahead and click the links, go follow her on social, and at least start a conversation. Marcy, this is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
What I'm going to leave with you is what stuck with me most in those 3 months of coaching that I did, and that's that you can do hard things. We drink because we think we can't. I can't handle that emotion. I can't deal with this stress. I can't deal with the anxiety. I can't. Yeah. You can. You so can. You're giving alcohol the power so that you don't have to deal with something. But I promise you're stronger than you ever given yourself credit for. And you'll really see that when you quit drinking, because then nothing is impossible after that.
Yeah. No, I can attest to it, because I did it in January and it was totally fine. Let me tell you, it was great. Well, Marcy, thank you for the work that you've done for yourself, and now the work that you're doing for others, and kind of breaking that stigma around alcohol that we have to have it and to do all things social, because it is not the case, or just as a coping mechanism, because that is not necessary. So thank you very much. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon. More dynamic guests.